Deep in space, on the far edge of a quiet sector, a massive alien defense station floated in the endless dark, its hull shining faintly in the light of a distant sun the size of a small moon. It was armed with rows of heavy cannons and shield arrays that could turn aside most enemy fleets for centuries. It had been a silent guardian, but that silence was broken in an instant. Alarms screamed through every corridor, red lights flashed on the walls, and a deep warning tone echoed again and again across the comms channels. Crew members stopped in their tracks and looked to the glowing screens above them. Each screen displayed the same urgent message written in bright, bold letters: warning, human warship approaching fast. The words struck like a blade into the hearts of those who read them, for every officer and soldier on the station knew the old stories about humans. They were not the largest empire, they were not the most advanced in every field, and they were not the most numerous. But in war, they were something else entirely. They were cunning and fierce, and they fought with a kind of will that could not be broken. Officers rushed to their stations, boots thudding against the metal floors. Orders were shouted over the noise of the alarms. Every sensor array was turned toward the direction of the incoming ship. Energy readings began to pour, and the commander, a tall, broad figure with silver-scaled skin and deep-set eyes, stood in the center of the control room, gripping the rail. Before him, his voice cut through the noise. "Scan it now. I want every detail," he ordered. The lead sensor officer worked quickly, his long fingers moving over glowing panels. Data streamed across the main screen, and the readings made the officer pause for a brief moment before speaking. "Sir, the ship is alone. There are no escorts, no fleet, no support craft, but its power readings are extreme, far beyond the norm for any known human vessel," the officer said. A ripple of unease passed through the control room. Crew members exchanged worried glances, voices lowered to whispers. The commander narrowed his eyes alone. He repeated quietly, "Then why would they send it alone if they wanted to attack? They would send more ships, would they not?" Another officer spoke. "Perhaps they believe one ship is enough. Sir, perhaps they want us to see that we cannot stand against even one of their warships." The thought hung in the air like a heavy shadow. The alarm still cried out, but now it was the silence between the cries that felt worse, the cold space between each pulse of sound where fear seemed to grow like ice. Reports came in from the outer scanning stations. The ship was closing fast, its course direct and unwavering. No signs of weapons fire, no signals on any channel. It was coming straight for them, and nothing they sent out seemed to make contact. It ignored hails, it ignored warnings, it ignored everything, as if the station was nothing more than a point on its path. The commander clenched his jaw, his scaled skin shifting slightly in the bright lights. He had heard stories from the war 40 years ago, when humans had fought the Krell Empire and burned their fleets to ash with tactics no one had ever seen before. Entire armadas lured into traps, entire planets defended with desperate last stands that somehow always ended in human victory, even when all logic said they should have lost. Why now, he wondered aloud, why send a warship here? The station had no quarrel with Earth, no conflict, no debt. But humans did not always need a reason to appear. Sometimes they came because of politics, sometimes for trade, sometimes for reasons no one outside their species could guess at. Crew members continued to work. The scanning officer announced more data. "Sir, the ship is a heavy-class dreadnought by size, but its energy output suggests something far more dangerous. Its shields are active at full power, even while in deep travel mode, and its engines are burning at a level that should tear the ship apart. Yet it moves as steady as if it were gliding on calm waters." The commander turned to the communications officer. "Try again, open every channel, make sure they hear us, and make sure we hear them." The comms officer sent the signal. His hands moved over the panels once, twice, 3 times, but nothing came back, not even the static that usually followed an unanswered hail. Only the quiet hum of their own systems filled the air until the alarms cut through again with their steady cry. In the far corners of the control room, younger officers whispered to each other about the stories they had heard about the human warship called the Dawnbreaker that had once fought for 6 days without resupply and still won, or the ship named Ironwell that rammed an enemy flagship after losing all weapons and split it in two. They spoke of these tales in low voices, as if saying the names too loud might summon them. The commander ignored the whispers, but he could feel their fear and knew it was justified. A human warship was not like other ships. Their designs were brutal, efficient, and their captains were known to act without hesitation. A single wrong move from the station could mean their end. The image of the ship appeared on the main screen for the first time. It was still far away, but the magnification showed its shape clearly, a dark blade slicing through space, the hull black, and unmarked, no flags, no symbols, only the harsh lines of its armor and the steady glow of its drive, no wasted detail, no decoration, only function. The sight made the air in the room feel heavier. What do they want? The commander asked again, more to himself than to anyone else. Is this a threat, or is it a warning? And if it is a warning, who is it for? No one answered him. The crew kept working. The sound of their movements mixed with the pulse of the alarms. The warship drew closer. Every second, each reading from the sensors made the picture worse. Its weapons arrays were hot charged, and ready the shields rippled with invisible energy strong enough to hold off the station's entire armament. Its engines burned brighter as it closed the distance. The commander finally spoke to all hand station crew. This is Commander Virek. Maintain your posts. Maintain discipline. We do not fire unless fired upon. We do not provoke the humans. Yet even as he said the words, he knew they might not matter. Humans acted by their own rules, and those rules could change. In an instant, the warship was coming, and nothing could stop it from arriving. The only question was what would happen when it did. The alarms wailed again, and the words on the screen flashed brighter warning, human warship approaching fast. And in that moment, every being on the station knew the next few hours could decide whether they lived or vanished into the cold dark forever. The alarms still echoed through the halls, though softer now, as the crew adjusted to their constant cry, and yet the fear remained heavy in the air. Like a storm waiting to break, the massive alien defense station drifted in its orbit above the barren moon, its metal walls trembling ever so slightly, as if it too felt the presence of the thing coming toward it. Inside the control room, Commander Virek stood tall, his silver-scaled hands resting firmly on the rail before him, his deep-set eyes fixed on the glowing shape of the human warship displayed on the main screen. Behind him, the bridge crew moved quickly, each officer doing their work without hesitation, but the weight of the moment was clear in every movement, in every breath they took. A young navigation officer spoke up, voice low, but clear. Commander, permission to speak granted, Virek said. Without looking away from the screen, the young officer swallowed. Before continuing, Sir, my grandfather fought against humans during the Rift War. He told me stories. He said they never gave up, no matter the odds. He said that even when their ships were burning, they kept fighting. He said they fought like they were part of the ship, like it was alive with them, and would die with them. Others on the bridge nodded, some quietly, some with small sounds of agreement. Tales of human persistence were known across the galaxy. They were not always seen as noble. Sometimes they were called reckless or even suicidal, but to those who had faced them in war, there was no mistaking the danger that came with such resolve. One of the senior engineers turned from his station, his voice steady, but edged with memory. I was on a freighter once that passed through the ruins of Krell Prime. After the humans had left, the cities were gone, the orbital defenses were shattered, the air still burned in places. But the strange thing was that they left the people alive. They had destroyed the war machine, but spared those who had no weapons. It made no sense at the time. Some said it was mercy, others said it was strategy. Virek finally turned to face his crew, his voice low, yet carrying across the room. We are not at war with Earth. We have no quarrel, but humans do not always need a quarrel. Sometimes they come for reasons we cannot see, and sometimes they come because something in their nature drives them into the heart of danger. The comms officer raised his head, eyes wide. Commander, we are receiving transmissions from nearby colonies. They have detected the warship too. It passed through 3 sectors without answering any hails. It did not fire. It did not slow. It simply passed by like we were invisible until now. That detail made the tension worse. If the warship had ignored others, then why was it heading straight for the station now? What was here that drew its attention? Sensor readings flashed across the screens in bright streams of numbers and graphs. The energy signature from the human vessel was growing stronger. The readings no longer fit into the known classifications. The engineers whispered among themselves, saying it looked like the ship was bending its own rules of physics, the drive burning far hotter than any ship should survive, yet the hull showed no sign of stress. In the corner of the room, an old officer with faded crimson skin and a limp leaned on his console and spoke in a quiet voice that somehow cut through the noise. I saw one once in my youth, the UNS Valiant. It was alone. It entered the field of 3 Arkan cruisers, and when it left, not one of those cruisers remained. It did not retreat. It did not hide. It simply advanced and destroyed them piece by piece, as if it already knew how they would fight. No one laughed. No one dismissed the tale, for in this room, such stories were not legends. They were warnings wrapped in memory, each one a reminder that human warships were not measured by size alone, but by the will of those who commanded them. Outside the viewports, the black of space stretched endlessly, the stars cold and unmoving, but in that stillness, there was a weight pressing closer. Every second, the warship, invisible to the naked, yet burning bright on the sensors, was crossing the final span between itself and the station. The commander paced slowly, his clawed feet clicking against the metal deck. He thought about the last time humans had come to this part of the galaxy. It had been over 70 cycles ago during the Scarian crisis, when an Alliance fleet had been trapped by a swarm of enemy drones. The humans had arrived late, but their arrival had turned the tide. They had burned the swarm to drifting ash and then departed without asking for reward or even thanks. Was this another such moment? He wondered, or was it the beginning of something far darker? The tactical officer spoke up, his voice tight. "Sir, if they attack the station, we can hold them for some time, but our shields are not designed for sustained engagement with a human dreadnought, and our weapons may not breach their armor without concentrated fire." Vyrek considered this, his eyes narrowing to thin slits, then said quietly, "We will not fire unless they give us no choice. Humans respect strength, but they respond to provocation. With fire, we must walk the narrow line between those two truths." In the crew pit below the main deck, a pair of junior officers exchanged nervous glances. One whispered to the other, "Do you think they know something we do not? Why come here without reason?" The other shook her head and replied, "Maybe there's a reason. Maybe we are about to find out what it is, and maybe we will not like it." The warship was now close enough that, even without magnification, its silhouette could be made out through the main viewport, black against the scattered stars, a knife edge cutting through the void, every line of it purposeful, every angle designed for battle. The comms officer tried again to send a message across every known frequency, every diplomatic channel, even the old emergency bands, but no voice came back. Only the silence of space answered them, and the hum of their own life support. The commander stopped pacing and stood tall, his voice calm but firm. All hands remain ready, power to shields, keep weapons on standby, and wait. In the corner, the old crimson-skinned officer muttered softly, so only those closest could hear, "Waiting is the hardest part with humans. They never wait themselves, they act." The sound of the engines from the human ship now reached their sensors, a steady rhythm, like the heartbeat of some great beast closing in with patience and certainty. The readings showed that every weapon array on the warship was charged, but none were locked on target. It was ready for war, but had not yet chosen it. Crew members moved with quiet urgency across the bridge, voices low, hands swift, eyes sharp. The weight of history, the pull of fear, and the edge of curiosity all mingled in the air, the kind of mix that made even veterans feel the tremor of uncertainty deep inside. The commander watched the approaching vessel, the alarms still flashing red, and the words on the display repeating again and again, warning human warship approaching fast. And with every repetition, the sense grew that this moment would be remembered for generations. The alien defense station floated in the dark of space, its metal hull steady and unshaken, but inside the hearts of those who served there, the weight of the approaching human warship grew heavier. With every passing breath, the alarms still pulsed, though softer, now replaced by the quiet hum of systems running at full readiness. Each officer and crew member worked without wasted motion, yet in their eyes was the same question: why was the warship coming straight for them? Commander Vyrek stood in the center of the bridge, the glow from the main display painting silver light across his scaled face. The image of the human vessel loomed larger, now no longer a distant shape on sensors, but a dark blade sliding through the void, each line sharp, each shadow deep. No banners, no marks, no lights except the pale glimmer of its engines. Its presence felt like a predator moving unseen, yet known in the wild. The communications officer sent out another wave of hails across every band known, and even a few ancient codes that had not been used in a century. The channels remained empty, no sound, no signal, no hint that the humans even heard them. The silence was worse than a threat, for a threat could be measured answer prepared for this silence was a choice, and it carried its own power. The tactical officer reported in a voice low and tense, "Sir, the warship has altered speed. It is no longer closing at combat velocity. It has slowed just enough to make arrival precise. The distance is shrinking by the minute. Its weapons remain charged. Its shields are at full. Its engines show no sign of strain. It is like watching a creature that knows it cannot be stopped." The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. A silent approach meant control. It meant the humans were in no rush, because they did not need to be. They were not chasing. They were arriving exactly as they intended. From the far side of the bridge, the lead engineer spoke without turning from his screens. "I am reading fluctuations in their hull structure. It is changing form in ways our scans cannot predict. The armor is shifting, absorbing, or redirecting the sensor sweeps, as if it is alive. If they're doing this intentionally, it is beyond any tech we have seen from Earth before." One of the younger officers whispered to another, "I thought humans did not build living ships." The other answered softly, "Maybe they do now. Maybe this one is not like the others." The warship crossed into the outer sensor net of the station. The readings came in sharper, every scan painting a clearer picture, and every new detail feeding the unease inside the control room. The hull was layered in heavy plates, woven with strange energy lines that pulsed faintly, like veins. The weapon arrays were larger than expected, with barrels wide enough to tear through the thickest station armor. With a single volley, the drive glow was steady, unwavering, burning hotter than it should yet know. Trace of instability appeared. Commander Virak watched the data scroll by each number, another reminder that this vessel was more than it seemed. He turned to his crew, "Keep scanning, keep your eyes open. If they make a move, I want to see it before it happens." Out in the void, the human warship shifted slightly on its path. Its angle, changing to face the station head on the move, was slow, deliberate, like the turning of a great animal that had fixed its gaze on prey and would not look away. A ripple of tension ran through the bridge as the reality of its focus became clear. The navigation officer spoke carefully. "They are on intercept course with 0 deviation. If they keep this heading, they will arrive in 12 minutes, sir." Virak gave a short nod, eyes on them every second. In the quiet corners of the bridge, crew members thought of the stories they had heard in their youth of human captains who fought without fear, who pushed their ships into enemy lines and broke them from within of battles, where humans seemed to know their opponents' moves before they made them. Such stories were often dismissed as exaggerations. But now, with the shadow of the warship moving closer, they felt less like myths and more like warnings left by survivors. The old crimson-skinned officer leaned forward, his eyes narrow and sharp. "Do you feel it?" he asked. No one in particular, that weight pressing in the quiet before a storm. That is the way humans arrive. They let you know they are coming not through words, but through the silence they bring. The station's long-range turrets shifted into position, their movements slow, precise. The defense network was awake and ready, yet no order to fire had been given, and none would be unless the humans forced it. For all their weapons and shields, the crew knew they would stand little chance against a dreadnought of this size, if it truly meant to fight. The warship continued its glide forward, closing the distance in steady increments. The light from the distant sun glinted faintly off its black hull, revealing scars and markings that might have been from past battles, though no detail stayed in view long enough to study, as the armor seemed to swallow the light itself in shifting patterns. The comms officer tried one last attempt, sending not a call, but a signal burst in universal diplomatic code. The message was simple: "Identify yourself and state your purpose." This was the kind of code all star-faring nations respected, a line that even in war was rarely ignored, yet no reply came. The hum of the bridge system seemed louder now, every flicker of light on the panels sharper, every breath drawn more carefully. The crew felt as though they were standing on the edge of something vast and unknown, and once the warship arrived, there would be no turning back. Virak moved to the viewport and stared at the oncoming vessel with his own eyes. There was something in its approach that was almost ceremonial, like a rite or a test, as if it was not simply traveling through space, but making a statement. Without words, his claws tapped lightly against the railing as he thought about what kind of statement it might be. Behind him, the tactical officer spoke again. "Range closing fast, sir. 10 minutes until arrival. Weapon still active, but targeting arrays remain idle. I cannot tell if that is a kindness or a warning." Perhaps both, Virek said softly without looking away. The silent approach continued the human ship, not speeding, not slowing, just holding its perfect line. The stars behind it shifted slowly as it moved, but the vessel itself felt fixed in space, as if it were the anchor, and everything else was moving toward it. The effect was unsettling, and yet no one could look away. In the crew pit below, two technicians spoke in hushed tones. I heard they named their warships like living things. One said, "What do you think this one is called?" The other shook his head. "Maybe we will find out just before it kills us." With 5 minutes left, the station shook faintly, not from weapons, but from the gravitational wake of the warship's massive mass and drive power. It was like feeling the air before a storm break over the land, the quiet roar of something immense that was almost upon them. Commander Virek turned from the viewport to address his crew. All stations maintain readiness, shields at maximum, weapons hot, but hold fire unless I give the order. This is still a diplomatic station, and we will not be the ones to start a war. The crew responded in unison, their voices steady, but their movements sharp. The human warship loomed larger now, so close that its armor plates could be seen shifting with the strange pulsing veins of energy within its hull. Its black surface drank in the light and gave nothing back, only the cold reflection. The human warship slowed as it came within direct range of the alien defense station, its black hull filling the main viewport like a wall of shadow. The glow from its engines dimmed, but its weapon arrays remained alive with energy. Every crew member on the station felt the weight of its presence, not through fire or attack, but through the stillness. It brought the kind of stillness that comes when a predator decides to look its prey in the eye before making its move. Inside the control room, Commander Virek stood rigid at the center, his scaled hands gripping the rail, his gaze fixed on the looming vessel. The bridge was silent, except for the quiet hum of systems and the measured breathing of those present. Then, without warning, every speaker, every comms panel, and every communication device on the station came alive with a single voice. It was a human voice, deep, calm, and cold as ice. "This is the UNS Vigilance." It said, "You are harboring fugitives. Release them now." The words cut through the air with the weight of an order, not a request. The crew looked at each other, their expressions a mix of confusion and fear. The commander raised his chin and stepped forward, speaking into the comms in a firm voice. "This is Commander Virek of Station Kareth Prime. You will identify these fugitives and explain your authority to demand them." There was no delay before the reply. "This is not a negotiation. You have 5 minutes." The message ended as suddenly as it began, leaving only the faint static of the comms line. Before silence returned, the commander's eyes narrowed. The humans were not offering evidence, not sharing data, not even naming the fugitives, just a command and a countdown. On the lower deck, the crew whispered in uneasy tones, "Who could these fugitives be? Why would a human dreadnought come alone for them?" The tactical officer leaned toward the commander and spoke quietly. "Sir, if they truly have 5 minutes before action, we must decide quickly." Virek's gaze swept across the crew. He wanted answers, and he wanted them fast. Sensors find every life form aboard this station not listed in our registry. The scanning officer's hands moved swiftly over glowing panels. The data appeared in moments. "Sir, we have 3 unregistered life signs in storage sector 7. Their BIOS match none of our allies." "Bring them to the command deck," Virek ordered, and his voice echoed across the comms to the security teams, who moved at once to follow his command. In the meantime, the commander turned to the comms officer. "Send back a signal, inform the humans. We are investigating the claim. Request more time." The comms officer hesitated before shaking his head. "They are not responding, sir. Every channel is closed except when they choose to open it." Outside the viewport, the UNS Vigilance remained motionless, its weapons still charged, but not firing. Its shield shimmering faintly in the light of the distant sun. It was a silent figure of judgment, watching and waiting for its command to be obeyed. Within minutes, the security teams arrived, dragging 3 figures into the control room. They were tall, thin, and covered in mottled skin, their eyes deep and wary. One of them struggled against the grip of the guards, shouting in a language most of the crew did not know, but the translation system quickly caught up. "Do not hand us over," the fugitive said. "If you do, you will doom more than this station. You will doom millions." The commander stepped closer, his scaled face calm, but his voice sharp. "Speak clearly. What have you done to bring a human warship here?" We took something the fugitive admitted without shame, something that belongs to Earth, but it is not a weapon. It is not even theirs to own. The second fugitive hissed sharply at the first, "Be quiet, you fool. Do you want them to take us now?" The first one shook their head. "They will take us no matter what we say, but they must know the truth." Virek's claws tapped against the rail. "Tell me what you stole and why." The fugitive opened their mouth to answer, but the voice of the human captain returned, cutting through the room like a blade. "You have 3 minutes." The entire bridge froze. The human voice carried no anger, no emotion, only a cold certainty that the deadline was drawing closer. The fugitive looked at the commander with a strange mix of desperation and defiance. "They will destroy your station if you refuse, but if you give us to them, they will still hunt what we carry, and they will not stop until they have it, even if it means burning worlds to get it." Virek studied them for a long moment, his mind weighing the words against the risk of defying the humans. In the corner of his vision, the old crimson-skinned officer leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "I have seen this before, sir. When the humans want something, they will cross any line and break any wall. They will not leave without it." The commander turned back to the viewport. The warship loomed closer now, its black armor shifting faintly, as though it breathed. The sight of it pressed against the mind like a weight impossible to lift. The crew watched the silent predator that had given them mere minutes to decide their fate. In the pit below, the tactical officer muttered to no one in particular, 3 minutes. And then what will they fire on us? Will they board us? Or will they do something we cannot even imagine? The third fugitive, who had been silent until now, finally spoke, their voice soft and trembling. "They will take us alive if they can, but if they cannot, they will destroy us from a distance. They have weapons for that. I have seen them used on a city before." The commander felt the air grow heavier. The bridge seemed smaller, the hum of the systems louder. He turned sharply to his crew. "Shields to maximum, weapons remain on standby." 2 minutes, the human voice said, without warning, the tone exactly the same as before. The fugitive who had spoken first stepped forward despite the guard's grip and looked Virek in the eye. "Commander, you're not their enemy, but if you give us to them, you will become a part of what they're doing. Do not make that choice." The commander did not answer. He looked back at the viewport, at the massive warship, waiting in silence. The choice pressed on him from all sides: his duty to protect the station, his duty to follow law, his duty to prevent unnecessary bloodshed. And yet the humans had offered no proof, no context, only a demand. 1 minute, the voice came again, unchanging, unshaken. The crew moved with tense precision, weapons crews at their posts, shield monitors watching every flicker of power, the comms officer watching for any sign the humans would speak again, the fugitives standing rigid under the guard of armed soldiers. Virek's mind raced, each path before him lined with risk. If he refused, he could bring destruction upon the station. If he complied, he could be handing over something that would bring destruction somewhere else. The clock in the corner of the main display counted down, each second another hammer blow in the silence. 30 seconds, the human voice said. The commander's hand hovered over the command to release the fugitives to the humans, his claws flexing the bridge, crew watching without speaking, the fugitives watching with a mix of fear and defiance. Outside the viewport, the UNS Vigilance shifted slightly, its massive hull catching the light, just enough to reveal the faint pattern of its energy lines glowing brighter, its weapons arrays tilting into position, yet still not locked on target. 10 seconds, the voice said. Virek's breath was slow, his mind cold, his choice inevitable, yet still painful. The hum of the warship's engines vibrated through the deck plates like a distant heartbeat, louder and louder, until it was all they could hear. 5 seconds, the voice said. The commander's claws tapped the rail one last time as he prepared to speak, the entire bridge holding its breath as the final seconds vanished into the silence between them and the humans. The alien defense station shook as another strange pulse from the human warship crossed the void and hit their shields, and the shield readouts flashed with numbers no one in the control room understood, and it was clear the human ship was doing something none of their systems could track, and the commander gripped the edge of the main console as he shouted for status reports, but the voices that answered were filled with confusion and fear, and some of them simply stared at their screens with wide eyes as if they could not believe what they were seeing, and outside the massive viewing window, the lone human warship floated in perfect stillness, like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike, and yet its presence felt heavier than any fleet they had ever faced in centuries of war. The chief sensor officer spoke with a shaking voice, saying the energy readings are still rising, Commander, and it is not a weapon we know, and it is not like any shield we know either, and it feels like the ship is holding the power back and storing it for something, and the commander narrowed his eyes, trying to guess what the humans might be planning, because the humans were famous for one thing above all else, and that was doing the thing no one thought was possible, and the commander knew from history that when a human warship moved alone into enemy territory, it was never by mistake and never without reason. In the far corner of the control room, one young officer whispered to another, asking if they thought the humans had come to attack or to deliver a message, and the other officer replied in a low voice that sometimes a message is more terrifying than an attack, because it means they're only showing you a fraction of what they can do, and the whisper carried in the tense air, making even the commander glance their way, as if the words had meaning he did not want to admit, and then the lights across the station flickered as if something had just passed through the entire system, and the engineer shouted that the human ship had sent some kind of wave into their power grid. Every screen on the station turned black for a single heartbeat, and then came back online with a new message in their language, but the message was not long, and it was not complicated, and it simply read "Stand down" or "Be erased," and the words felt heavier than the silence that followed, because no one in the control room doubted that the humans could do it if they wanted to, and some of the officers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while others clenched their fists in anger, but no one dared to speak loudly because they all knew the humans might be listening. The commander's second-in-command leaned close and said in a low voice, "We should respond now, before they act," and the commander nodded slowly, but did not give the order right away, because something inside him wanted to understand what the humans were doing here alone and why they had sent a message instead of simply firing their weapons. And he had heard old stories from veterans of wars long past about human captains who would rather give their enemy a chance to avoid destruction than simply crush them without warning, and those stories always ended with the same lesson, which was that ignoring the chance was a mistake that no one survived. A soft tone sounded from the main console, and the communications officer said, "Commander, they're opening a channel," and the commander ordered it on screen, and a moment later the image of a human captain appeared, her face calm and her eyes steady, and she spoke in a voice that was firm without shouting, saying, "You have crossed into a restricted zone, and your recent actions against human colonies have been noted. We are here to deliver a warning. You will cease all hostile operations in this sector, and you will release any human prisoners you hold. If you fail to comply, you will not see us coming next time, and you will not have time to surrender." The image vanished before the commander could answer, and in the sudden silence, everyone in the control room looked to him for orders, and he felt the weight of their fear and their hope and their pride all at once, and he knew that the decision he made now would not only decide the fate of the station, but also how their people would remember this day for generations. And the commander took a deep breath and finally spoke, telling his officers to prepare a reply and to open the station archives on human military history, because he wanted to know exactly what kind of power he was dealing with before making his choice. As the officers worked, the human ship remained still outside, its hull gleaming in the dim light of the distant star, and every few moments a faint shimmer would ripple along its surface like the skin of some living creature, and the alien crew felt as if the ship itself was watching them, measuring them, judging them, and one by one the officers began to understand that whatever choice their commander made, the humans already knew what it would be, and they would be ready for it. Hours passed, and the human warship did not move, but its presence pressed down on the alien station like a storm cloud ready to break, and in the mess hall soldiers ate in silence, their eyes drifting off into the screens showing the human vessel, and in the engineering decks crews checked and rechecked systems, knowing in their hearts that no amount of repairs would matter if the humans decided to attack, and in the observation deck civilians and off-duty personnel stared out into space, wondering why one small ship could make them feel like prey. Back in the control room, the commander sat in his chair reading through ancient reports from wars fought long before his time, and every page told the same story, that humans fought with fury, but also with strategy, that they could be merciless, but also strangely merciful, and that when they gave an enemy a warning, it was never repeated, and he realized then that the message "stand down or be erased" was not a bluff, it was the only chance they were going to get. And as the commander looked once more at the silent warship outside, he knew that the next words he spoke would either bring peace or unleash something his station could never survive. The alien station hung silent for a long moment after the strange human message filled the air. The sound had been calm and steady, but it carried something heavy, something that pressed against every mind in the command center. The commander felt at first a deep pull in the chest, a strange mix of fear and respect. He looked around and saw his officers frozen like statues, some with their eyes wide, some with their hands trembling. The human warship was still there on the screens, unmoving, but it no longer felt like a silent threat. It felt like a predator watching. The commander gave the order to open a direct channel to the human vessel. The communication officer nodded nervously and began to send the signal. The first try brought no answer. The second try brought only static. But on the third attempt, a voice replied. The voice was steady like before, but now it sounded closer, sharper. It said they were here for a reason, and they would speak only once. The commander asked what they wanted. The human voice paused, then said they were searching for something that had been stolen from them, something that, if not returned, would bring consequences no one in the sector could survive. Murmurs spread through the room. Officers whispered to one another, wondering what the humans meant. The commander demanded to know more, but the voice refused to explain. Instead, it repeated the demand: return what was taken. The commander felt a knot form in his chest, because he knew there had been a recent incident. One of their patrol fleets had attacked a small vessel near the border. They thought it belonged to smugglers, but the cargo had been strange. Some kind of sealed container that even their scientists could not open. The container was now locked deep within the station vault. The commander realized with growing unease that the humans might be here for that very thing. He ordered the science team to bring a full report to the control room. Within minutes, they arrived, pale and tense. They explained that the container gave off strange readings like nothing they had seen before. It was heavy and cold to the touch, but it also pulsed with an energy unlike any known technology. When they tried to open it, the metal seemed to resist every tool and every beam they used. The commander asked if they knew what it was, but the chief scientist shook his head, saying it was like the container was alive. The human voice came again over the channel, this time sharper and with a warning tone. They said time was running out. The commander tried to explain that they had the container, but they did not know its purpose. The voice told them to bring it to the docking bay in the next hour, or they would take it themselves, and no one would like the way they would do it. The commander felt the weight of the choice before him. He could give up the container and avoid what might be certain destruction, or he could keep it and risk finding out what a single human warship could do. In the War Council chamber, the high officers gathered, each speaking over the other. Some argued to hand the container over immediately. Others insisted that the technology inside might be priceless and could give them power for generations. One officer claimed the humans were bluffing, that no single warship could destroy the station, but the commander remembered the scan results, the power levels far beyond anything they had recorded. He also remembered the fear in the room when they first saw the readings. The council argued until the commander slammed his fist on the table and demanded silence. He reminded them of the human history, the battles they had fought, and the empires they had brought down. He told them humans did not make idle threats, and they did not send warships for no reason. The room grew quiet. As they considered his words, the commander made his decision. He ordered the container to be moved to the docking bay under heavy guard. He also ordered that the station shields be raised to full strength, just in case the humans tried anything. Once the container was ready, he would personally oversee the transfer. As the guards carried the sealed object down the long corridor, the air seemed to grow colder. The energy coming from the container made the lights flicker and the floor vibrate slightly. Some guards glanced at one another with unease, whispering that they felt something moving inside. The commander walked behind them, his eyes fixed on the object, his mind heavy with questions. When they reached the docking bay, the massive outer doors were closed, and the human warship still hovered outside like a silent giant waiting. The commander ordered the bay doors to open slowly. The bright light of space flooded in, and the human ship drifted forward with a grace that was almost unnatural. It stopped just short of the force field barrier. A smaller craft detached from its side, gliding toward the bay. The human voice came again. telling them to place the container on the marked platform and step back. The commander signaled his guards to do as instructed. They set the object down and moved away, their weapons held ready even, though they knew it would not matter if the humans decided to attack. The small human craft landed without a sound. Its hatch opened, and from the shadows stepped a single figure, tall, broad, and wrapped in dark armor that seemed to shimmer with tiny lights. The figure walked with slow, deliberate steps toward the container, not saying a word. The commander felt every eye in the bay watching the human. The figure placed one hand on the container, and the metal seemed to react, glowing faintly beneath the touch. Then, without effort, the human lifted it and carried it back toward the craft as if it weighed nothing. Just before stepping inside the craft, the human turned their head slightly toward the commander and said 4 words, "We will remember this." Then the hatch closed, the craft rose and returned to the warship. The massive vessel slowly turned away, drifting back into the dark of space. As it moved farther, the tension in the bay began to fade. But the commander knew something had changed forever. The humans had come and taken what they wanted without a single shot fired, and yet it felt like a warning had been carved into the memory of every soul on the station. Far from the alien defense station, the lone human warship floated in the dark void, its hull faintly glowing from the energy coursing through hidden systems, its engines silent, yet ready to ignite at a moment's notice. Inside the command bridge, the human captain stood tall, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The alien fleet was there, vast and imposing, but scattered just enough for his strategy to work. The crew around him moved with perfect coordination, each person knowing their role without the need for constant orders. They've been trained for moments like this, where one wrong move could mean disaster, yet they remained calm and focused. Back on the alien station, the commander received the latest scan data. The human warship was not slowing down. Its trajectory was deliberate. Every reading screamed that the ship was dangerous beyond measure. Yet there was no sign of weapons charging, no visible preparation for attack. The commander's advisors argued among themselves. Some said it was a bluff meant to make them panic. Others believed the humans were preparing a move so sudden they would have no time to respond. The commander silenced them with a raised hand and ordered all ships into a defensive formation, but his voice betrayed a hint of unease. In the human ship's tactical room, holographic projections flickered to life, showing every alien vessel, every possible approach vector, and every weakness in their defenses. The captain studied them carefully, but he knew something the aliens did not. This mission was not about destruction. It was about sending a message. The humans had learned long ago that the greatest victory was won not with fire, but with fear, the kind that settles deep into the minds of those who might one day think about challenging them again. He ordered a series of maneuvers designed to bring the warship within striking distance of the alien flagship without ever firing a single shot. The alien commander watched the human vessel close in like a predator, stalking its prey. The ship's movements were smooth and precise, no wasted motion, no hesitation. The commander's instincts screamed at him to attack. Yet every time his targeting systems locked on the human warship shifted course just enough to break the lock, it was as if the humans knew exactly how their targeting worked and how to avoid it. Panic began to spread through the alien crews as the warship came closer, its energy readings still climbing higher than anything they had ever recorded before. Suddenly, the human warship slowed and turned slightly to the side, its main viewing panels facing directly toward the alien flagship. A transmission request appeared on the alien commander's screen. His advisors warned him not to accept it, fearing it might be some form of digital weapon, but his curiosity overpowered his caution. The message came through without encryption, and the image of the human captain filled the screen. His voice was calm, steady, and carried the weight of absolute certainty. He told them they were not here for war today, but to remind them that Earth had no fear of their fleets or their weapons, and that any future aggression toward humanity would end before it could begin. The alien commander felt a cold shiver run down his spine. There was no threat in the captain's words, yet the meaning was clear. The humans could destroy them if they chose to, and the fact they had come alone proved it more than any battle could. He looked at the readings again, the power levels, the shield strength, the speed with which the ship had moved. It was unlike anything in their databases, and it made him realize they knew almost nothing about human technology, or how far it had advanced since their last conflict. As the message ended, the human warship began to turn away, its engines igniting with a blinding flare. The alien sensor struggled to track it. As it accelerated faster than anything they could match, in seconds it vanished into the darkness, leaving only silence and the faint hum of the station systems behind. The alien commander stared at the empty void for a long time before ordering all ships to stand down, his voice heavy with the knowledge that they had just been measured and found wanting. He knew that from this day forward, the memory of the lone human warship would haunt every strategic meeting, every defense plan, and every whisper of war in their council chambers. Far from the alien station, the human captain stood on the bridge watching the stars streak past. As his ship slipped into faster-than-light travel, his crew relaxed slightly, but the captain remained still, his mind on the next mission. He knew that the fear they had planted today would last for years, maybe decades, but fear faded with time, and when it did, there would always be another reminder waiting just beyond the edge of alien sensors. He allowed himself the smallest of smiles before turning away from the viewport and giving the order to set course for home. In the alien capital, news of the encounter spread quickly. Reports described the human warship in terms usually reserved for legends. Words like unstoppable and invincible were whispered in every corridor. The political leaders argued about whether the humans had come in peace or simply to test their defenses. Some believed the humans had done this to prepare for a larger invasion. Others thought it was their way of ensuring stability without direct conflict. Whatever the truth, one fact was clear: the balance of power had shifted in a single day, and it was now tilted heavily toward Earth. Months later, in training academies across alien space, cadets studied simulations of the encounter. Every detail of the human ship's maneuvers, every sensor reading, and every transmission analyzed endlessly, yet no one could find a flaw in the human strategy. It was a move so bold and so perfectly executed that it became the standard by which all future operations were measured. And as the years passed, the legend of the lone human warship grew even larger, whispered with both fear and respect across the stars.